Irish pharma firm called to act by Katrina Murphy. Hello class, my name is Katrina Murphy. I have decided to do my first ethical dilemma presentation on the Business Ethics Highlights article titled Reparations for Century-Old Wrongs. This article describes an ethical dilemma a major Irish pharma firm is facing. And in this picture here, you see some of these stakeholders that we'll be discussing. The presentation will describe the situation, evaluate alternative courses of action, give a recommendation, and explain the action plan. Now let's take a look at the situation summary for this ethical dilemma. Two companies, Wellcome Foundation and Glaxo Laboratories, that merged with GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, an Irish pharma firm, are responsible for performing vaccine and other clinical trials, including formula trials, on mothers and infants without consent between 1922 and 1998 at mother and baby homes. The Commission of Investigation found the trials did not comply with the regulatory or ethical standards permitted at the time of their occurrence. These findings, outlined by the Commission of Investigation, suggest GSK make reparations. Pictured here is Roderick O'Gorman, the Minister of Children, and he is the one that is calling GSK to action. Now let's look at the alternative courses of action that the company can take. I identified two. First, they could dispute the obligation. Second, they could compensate the trial victims. The company can dispute their obligation since the two companies in question only make up a part of GSK and the trials occurred years before the mergers did. Also, GSK is not legally responsible for the actions of the independent researchers conducting the trials. The other alternative calls for the company to act swiftly by accepting its corporate social responsibility to the stakeholders for the trial victims and show compassion by compensating the victims as recommended by the Minister of Children. I do believe that that's the best option, which brings us to our recommendation. For my recommendation, I absolutely agree with the Minister of Children. In the wake of the findings presented by the Commission of Investigation, I find that the most appropriate action for GSK is to compensate the victims and publicly take responsibility for the actions of the two companies it merged with. This action best reflects the sources of ethical standards in the decision-making framework. It also best reflects corporate social responsibility, something that stakeholders and investors value. This option reflects a company with ethical standards, something I believe GSK needs to consider. Now we'll talk about the next steps and the action plan to go through with my recommendation. First, they need to immediately and publicly accept their responsibility, then compensate the victims and protect their image. By immediately and publicly accepting responsibility, GSK will prove to its stakeholders that they are aware of the suffering they have caused and are eager to make reparations. Next, they should plan to compensate the victims fairly. They should look to address their current ethical standards and ensure to the public that they are now operating with the highest regard to regulatory and ethical standards. Here are my references. To conclude, for this situation, I believe my decision best serves the firm and its stakeholders as it's continuing to build a strong foundation for corporate social responsibility. Corporations must honor their obligations to their stakeholders as a moral minimum to satisfy the base threshold to be considered ethical. This will help the firm to remain attractive to investors that value ethical business practices. It also helps them maintain a healthy business to government partnership. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.